as the Lamar turns. So you got a bunch of different things here. Let's start with a lot of people have said, hey, why not the Atlanta Falcons? Arthur Blank is an owner who is very well liked. There is the thought that, because he's Mike Vick 2.0 without any of the off-the-field nonsense, right? And when I say off-the-field nonsense, let's be honest, off-the-field nonsense was dogfighting, and Mike Vick now is one of the most respected former players in the history of the NFL. It truly is. Like, you ask NFL dudes, because we all grew up watching him. I was in college same time. We all grew up watching him and just marveled at his talent. And when it all fell apart, and then him putting it back together, and how he's owned it and moved on, all those things, like Mike Vick. But look, when he was in Atlanta, it was a mess. He didn't work hard in terms of studying his playbook, and he had too much other stuff going on. And Lamar hasn't had any sort of issues, none. So a lot of people have said that. Well, the Falcons, to this point, have shown no interest. Arthur Blank, their owner, said there's no question that Jackson is one of the top quarterbacks in the league, but it was a different player in a different time last offseason. Blank also questioned Jackson's durability. Looking at it objectively, I'd say there's some concern over how long he can play his style of game. This is what he said to Josh Kendall of The Athletic. Hopefully a long time, but he missed 5 or 6 games each of the last 2 years. Every game counts in our business. Okay, so I'm going to go in a second into all the different things working against him. And you have writers and people on social media and people on television who are so obnoxious that they simply want to pick DeSean Watson. First of all, DeSean Watson's contract is bad. Okay? We all understand that. It's not a good contract. It was a ridiculous trade and a ridiculous contract. And no one was anywhere near that stratosphere, and the only reason they did so, the Browns did so, was out of sheer desperation. That's what happens when you get into a bidding war. Sometimes someone will go 10,000, and wait, we were just at 3. Okay, going once, going twice, sold. That's kind of what happened there. And I understand the precedents. We've actually covered this for a good year and a half. That, hey, he has no off-field issues like DeSean. He hasn't suffered injury, ACLs. DeSean suffered 2. I get it. Neither has been particularly great in the playoffs. DeSean doesn't have an MVP. Lots of stuff. The problem with it is, if it was true precedent, and by precedent, I mean like we see in the legal definition where that's the law and everything falls afterwards is because of that law. Kyler Murray signed afterwards. It wasn't fully guaranteed. Aaron Rodgers signed afterwards. It was not fully guaranteed. Russell Wilson signed a new contract afterwards. It was not fully guaranteed. So it's not actually precedent setting, even if it did set some sort of precedent that this actually is out there. So Lamar Jackson took to Twitter this morning. Let's get real. I have a 100% PCL. I'd rather have a 100% PCL than go out there and play horrible, forcing myself to put my guys in a bad situation. Now that's selfish of me, Jackson tweeted last night. I don't remember me sitting out on my guys week 1 versus the Jets to week 12 versus the Broncos. How come y'all all of a sudden say I sit out because of the money, in which I've gotten hurt anytime within that time frame? We could know the Super Bowl had been on my mind since April 2018. I don't know. As I've said, you can't have it both ways. Either you sat out because you wanted a new contract, or you didn't, or you sat out because you were legitimately hurt. And if you're legitimately hurt, well, then you missed 15 games over the past 2 seasons, including the end of the past 2 seasons. Now, if you're legit hurt, then you're legit hurt. And what Arthur Blank is saying is, keep in mind, we all know that we react to the present and to the future based upon our past. Okay, so Arthur Blank had Mike Vick, right? The Mike Vick thing didn't fall apart just with the dogfighting. The Mike Vick thing started to fall apart when he got hurt in I think it was a preseason game. So he's had a running quarterback that previously got hurt. He also is in the same division as the Carolina Panthers. And what happened to Cam Newton? He won MVP, and he was never the same since. Why? Because he took a savage beating. And if you want to say, hey, well, he's different than Lamar Jackson because Lamar is much quicker, he avoids contact, you're right. But he's also much smaller than Cam Newton, who's a gigantic human being, and he doesn't run the football as much as he never ran the football as much as Lamar's running it. But in his, and then they were in the bidding war for DeSean Watson last year. They knew what the landscape was like. They knew it became a bidding. They were trying to get him. And I'm guessing that last year, the reason they didn't get DeSean was they never thought of going to 5 years guaranteed because they thought it was crazy. Why? Because he has a history of injuries and he's seen running quarterbacks get hurt. And DeSean's a lot less of a runner than Mike Vick was, than Lamar is, than Cam Newton. Like these are just realities. Just realities. So what people who support Lamar Jackson, they have this incredibly screwed up way of looking at it, where they think that owners or GMs, if they don't give a fourth or a fifth year fully guaranteed, that somehow that money goes back into the pocket of the owner, back into the pocket of the general manager. Like, none of that is true. The reality is that if you sign a deal where it's 3 years fully guaranteed, and we talked about this yesterday, the reality is most of these deals, they can't get rid of you after to year 4 because there's too big a cap hit. They just can't. And if they do, you go out and sign a new deal. But if you're any good, they have to rework your contract during it so they avoid that massive contract cap hit and kick it down the road. So what you're asking Arthur Blank, for example, to do is, hey, because he's Lamar Jackson, even though you lived through the Mike Vick thing and he got hurt, forget about all that. Even though you've watched the Cam Newton thing and he got hurt and he got beat up and he wasn't nearly the same, forget all about that. Even though you obviously did not bid at the level of the Cleveland Browns, and that's why they got DeSean Watson, and everybody agrees that's a terrible contract, forget all about that. And because social media and former players and current players think this is what, like, no, it's not. Arthur Blank is a billionaire. He didn't get to be a billionaire by going like, I know this is a really bad business deal, but I'm going to do it anyway. And oh yeah, by the way, what no one has said outside of this here show is, okay, here's where Lamar is caught. It's not just in the 5-year guaranteed contract and that money. Okay, it's those big contract quarterbacks. You can only go and get those guys if you have a ready-made Super Bowl team. And by the way, generally they don't work. This free agency, and this would be he's not actually a free agent, also something that's not really discussed. Like the Ravens actually want him back. The Texans and DeSean Watson, that was not coming back. That was over. Okay, but in order to build a franchise in terms of its talent, you have to do that with a quarterback on a rookie deal or a minimum deal. Because it's the only way in which you can put money to other places, so you build up the overall talent. And then, if that rookie quarterback is good enough, then you give him the big contract, and then you figure out who can we keep, who can we not keep. We kind of go through this cycle all over again, only you do what Kansas City's doing, where you have to kill it in the draft because you got a quarterback making such a gigantic portion of the salary cap. So the teams that Lamar could actually, so the Atlanta Falcons would be insane to trade for Lamar Jackson. Not because he's not better than Desmond Ridder, but because they're not winning a Super Bowl. They're not doing anything. They don't have good enough talent. They were in anybody's conversation the least talented team in the league. Would they be better with Lamar? Yeah, but they couldn't actually ever get good because of the amount of money he's making. But Lamar's trying to have it both ways, right? Trying to have it both ways. He's trying to have it, hey, I would never sit out on my guys just because of money. Okay, so then you've been hurt. Well, no, I'm not injury prone. I don't. Yeah, you kind of are.